Welcome back to Decoded Dialogues, where tech talks and stories spark transformation. I'm your host, Crystal Fernandez, and today we're talking about how AI is moving from experimentation into real enterprise execution. I'm joined today by Austin Maxey, Vice President of Salesforce at Apex IT, and Chris Uhl, Product Client Director for Oracle at Apex IT. We'll be discussing the launch of Atlas, how Apex IT is using AI today, and what the future looks like as AI becomes part of the way organizations implement, support, and optimize enterprise applications. Welcome, Austin and Chris. I'm so excited to have you both here today. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
I would love for you guys to just tell me a little bit about yourselves, how you got into this space, how you got into the AI space as well, and what you're up to right now. So I'm going to start with Austin and then we'll jump to Chris. How about that?
Perfect. So my name's Austin Maxey, and as Crystal mentioned, I now lead our Salesforce practice here at Apex IT, but kind of fell into this really as a technologist. So I worked in ERP development, and then kind of fell into revenue, what's today is kind of revenue transformation space, but was CPQ, that that middle office between your CRM and your ERP, and spent about a decade in that space, and how I ended up finding my way through small startups to Oracle and then eventually to Apex. And as I mentioned, am now focused my time on our Salesforce practice. But I've also had a very big itch in understanding and getting really deep for the last few years in AI, whether it be just advancing my own personal life, creating projects with my family, and teaching my kids to what we're building here at Apex.
That's awesome. I love that. And Chris, how about you?
I didn't take the same path that Austin took. I uh, I actually I started in the contact center or in a call center.
Okay.
I've been in contact centers for about 25 years now, and started all the way from just a phone person, taking care of customers and working my way through the different organization. And then started getting into systems and tools, the deployment, the migration, sort of the optimization of those processes. And that naturally led to this conversation of automation. And that's really turned into AI these days. And, recently before joining Apex, I was involved in contact center AI operations where we had done some deployments. And I wanted to kind of branch out a bit and sort of take that experience to other clients and other customers. And that's sort of how I landed in this particular space that I'm in.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so why AI? Why now? Let's start with the big picture. Why does AI matter so much for Apex right now?
Well, I think so. I'll start.
Okay.
My take has always been, how do I frame this on behalf of my customer? My customer's expecting faster, cheaper, and more efficient, and ever evolving, really. And the way that
Sure.
you achieve that is with AI these days. Like we create automation every day. We as consultants, we as technologists, we cannot innovate at that speed that a customer's expecting without the use of AI. So AI, well governed AI, is changing the way that we're able to respond to our customers. And us as consumers have a certain expectation as well of what can I do and how quickly can I do something.
And I think the thing I'd also add on to that is AI, particularly in the consulting space, it's actually very similar to the type of transformation we're seeing in contact center spaces. But for consultants, consultants start with a blank piece of paper. Well, AI can help remove that blank page. In a lot of ways, AI can help draft and accelerate what the consultant is already doing, and then letting that human really focus on the client needs.
I love that. So, what feels different about this moment compared to earlier waves of automation and analytics?
You know,
I know it's a
I
fun
think for
question.
Yeah, no, I think from my perspective, it really comes down to the way the technology is being applied. Previously, when you would do automation, you had to be very deterministic, right, in your responses, and you had to program it in a very specific way. And if it didn't achieve that certain way, you'd end up with a lot of frustration. I mean, if anybody has called old school automated IVR in the last 10 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're just, screaming, I just want to talk to somebody. Right.
Right.
But now the technology, the way you can apply the technology, it's that probabilistic style, and it's more intuitive and it's understanding, and it changes the way you engage and interact with that technology. And I think that's why it's so different, and it's really kind of coming to the fruition of the promise of AI now.
And I would also add
Austin?
there's two things that come to mind for me, not only as a practitioner, but in just everyday life. I think
Mm,
about context. So what 24, even 36 months ago, it was a
Mhm.
fun tool to play around with, generate images.
Sure.
Now I understand how to apply it. Whether it's I'm using AI to write letters, I'm using it to proofread things, or maybe it is a context layer for something larger in enterprise. Secondly, is trust. I think one, we're building better trust measures,
yeah.
putting the right processes around AI, but also I think we just have an expectation these models have gotten better over time. And time is it's not that long when you look at the timeline of many technologies, right? We're releasing models every month, but we have more trust in the outcomes
Mm.
because there's time put in, we're spending more time, but we're also building processes that surround AI to put that trust layer.
Right, absolutely. So, for clients who are still trying to separate the hype from the real value, where do you think they should focus first? I know,
That's a
hard
great question.
question.
So we go through processes by which we unearth value. So we'll go through and everybody's got a use case, right? Everybody raise their
Sure.
hand. I want to build a bot to respond to this, to inject into my chat agent, or I want to
Mm,
automate some data on a CRM page to get my seller more intelligence. Everybody's got all those type of
Mm.
use cases, but then we iterate, we ideate, and we get lost in what's first. So we try to put a measured approach. So you're generally not going to have a lack of ideas, but it's what do you then prioritize to execute upon? And it's really just a value measurement. So looking at, okay, if I do apply some type of AI to intelligence in our CRM, for instance, what is that really going to yield? Is it better insights because I've got an increased revenue opportunity because I'm serving up upsell opportunities, or am I actually reducing cost of my call center by diverting agent interaction and
Mhm.
using AI agents, those type of things. So I think it really comes down to putting a measured approach so you don't end up in analysis paralysis. You don't
Right.
just go after the low hanging fruit because they generally won't generate as much value.
The other thing I'll add on to that is, especially if you're trying to separate the hype, you gotta crawl before you can walk. And it's going and finding, even if it seems like you look at it, and you say, this is just not a great use case. Go find the easy use case. Go build some trust. Go get some experience with it. I think that if you can build on that foundation, you will be much better to be able to distinguish between when somebody walks in and says, I can do something for you, and know, well, maybe you can't, but you can at least be experienced in the technology.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So I think this sets the stage pretty well for what I want to talk about next. Let's talk about how Apex IT is turning that idea into something practical through, ta-da, the use of Atlas. Can you guys tell me about Atlas and what Apex IT is doing with that? So Austin, I think you've been the closest to building Atlas, right? What sparked the idea for the application in the first place?
And so for the viewers, Atlas is very much a framework of what we use across Apex, everything from technology, process, and through governance. And so what started when we think about the technology, our job was trying to get closer to customers or prospects quicker. So when we talk about the speed of development, there's not a single customer that hasn't pushed back on any consultant that said, hey, I can't get the right SMEs in the room to tell you what we're doing today, or I don't want to spend the time and money for you to detail out my as is process. I don't care about that. I want to go to the 2B. So part of Atlas is getting closer to your business processes by way of discovery. And so we work with Salesforce, we work with Oracle, cloud and on-prem to go in, and Atlas can reach into these programs and analyze your configuration, your data, and your business process. So it gives us the context layer within minutes to say, okay, let's get connected, understand what you're doing. Our context layer within the platform will help us govern, is this best practice or is it not?
Mhm.
And then again, within minutes, that discovery is nearly complete. So now we have a whole nother layer of intelligence to then approach you as our customer or our prospect to talk about what you're looking to do. Rather than simply talking about the to be state, we've now got a grounded foundation of what you're doing today. And that's then leverage for how we then take this into what we consider the design components of Atlas, creating the design patterns into the accelerate component, which is the AI implementation. So it is truly a discovery through deployment platform.
Okay, so now that you've told us about Atlas, what made you think of it in the first place? I'm going to run back to that question because I am really genuinely curious. Like, what made you think, wow, we need this? Like, what sparked that idea?
So, like when we were talking about when I put myself in the customer shoes, I want it better, faster, cheaper. We're not the only consultancy that are thinking about these things. There
Hmm.
have been tools, especially in the Salesforce world. There's a large marketplace. You can scan an org, you pay some money, you have
Sure.
this technology to scan an org. That's table stakes. What we want to do is we want to be able to accelerate every part of our consulting journey from discovery and design through the implementation. There are now tools that go out and write code for you. Everybody
Hmm.
understands that. It's not as easy in an enterprise platform. We
Right.
also have the point of view that the SaaS apocalypse will not erase the Oracles, the Salesforces, the Workdays, etc.
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
everybody wants to own a platform like that and maintain
Right.
it. These platforms will advance faster because of the use of AI tools like Atlas. So why do we build this? Because we're trying to accelerate and beat our competitors when it comes down to and how we are able to inject value and do that really rapid.
So it was more of an idea of how do you make your job easier, make the experience easier on the customer, right? And to make it a little more expedient, right? You're turning
Correct.
you're turning weeks worth of discovery into minutes worth of discovery.
And we also wanted the ability to unlock the mousetrap that is some of these on-prem ERPs that you've been
Hmm.
there's no CFO or CIO that after 30 years of running these platforms, maybe 50, do they want to rip it out, especially when they're retiring. Now you have the ability to unlock. Let's enable that. You want to use the latest technology. Let's now make it easier to get off this nascent technology into the cloud because we have tools like Atlas.
So I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell me a little bit more about the core capabilities and workflows of Atlas. Let's dig a little deeper into it, what it does and how it's going to be beneficial to our clients and our consultants.
So one use case that we're seeing today, and we use it across all of our managed services.
Sure.
So when you want to do this discovery, think about it as a scanner. So we're trying to measure whether it's every day or it's every month. Over time, we're looking at these scans. You may be upgrading, you may be adding new code, new
Sure.
configuration. You want to look for regression issues. And we can compare. We'll scan day one, we'll scan day 10, what's changed so we can understand that we can look across different environments. One's been upgraded, our dev environment's been upgraded, our production environment has not. What is the differential, right? So we're able to do that analysis. Pretty powerful. We also look across multiple orgs, so accelerating our customers that are looking at M&A. How do you consolidate environments? We can look at both and understand how those come together. More so when I think about really I mentioned the design patterns. Net new project, your existing customer to add new environments. You're a sales CRM customer. You want to add customer service. Well, you still have to build on the foundation. Let's understand the foundation. So when you look at things like a net new project, or you're building upon an existing framework, let's just say a CRM customer using sales. You want to add a service component, customer service. You have to understand the foundation. So we do that scan. We understand what's efficient, what may need to be refactored to continue to scale. Atlas allows us to design. So we talk to Atlas. There are components that are deterministic.
Mhm.
There are elements that are AI enabled to allow us to then communicate with Atlas, say, hey, we're looking to add a call center functionality. We want to add this telephony integration. We want the security model. Atlas is going to create the design pattern and say, here's the specification. Here's how I would configure it. And in fact, here is the configuration bundle. Depends on the application, the form in which we're going to create it. But our accelerate takes that bundle of code, configuration, metadata, or something of the likes, XML, and passing that to your application. So not everything is, turnkey. We try to automate those mundane tasks, the simple tasks, the setup tasks that we have to do with every project. Customers are paying for that, right? Because somebody has to do it. We can accelerate all of that, build it in Atlas, and our customer or our consultants rather are focused on the really difficult tasks. So we help accelerate a lot of that build. So getting into it, it's not just the scanning technology. We're actually building the design frameworks. We're building in the documentations. We're generating use cases. We're generating test scripts. Because we have all this in the platform, we're also injecting the quality assurance. So now only are we automating the configuration in the development packages, but we have the testing automation that's also part of the package. So not only are we're creating these design frameworks and build frameworks with AI, we're also validating it to make sure that we've got the trust layer in place.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the delivery methodology that we're using as Atlas, right?
Of
Chris,
course.
can you tell me a little bit about the methodology, the customer adoption? When you look at delivery today, where do you think Atlas can make the biggest difference right away?
So I think one of the things to think about, Atlas is not only a technology, but it's also a part of our methodology. If anything, it's accelerating what our existing methodology was, right? So all of the things that
Mhm.
we have to do as consultants, they're still getting done, right? But now they're on a much faster track. And so when I think about the things that Atlas is making the biggest difference in, I immediately think about the documentation and the user stories and that voice of the customer, right? Because there's
Mhm.
been many times where we're gathering not only the system information, right, but then we're also interviewing that client to get information from them, and we're bringing it together in a model that can help us produce a draft user story, can help us produce, the fit gap, the process models. That typically takes a lot of manpower to do originally.
Mhm.
And now it's being done in days and hours where it used to be measured within weeks. And the way I think about it is again, AI is removing that blank page, right? And providing something for the consultant to validate and to react to, and for that customer to be able to validate and react to.
So, how do you see Atlas fitting into the way Apex IT already delivers projects from discovery through go live and optimization? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is this is not a separate process. It's not even AI bolt on. All right.
Right.
It's a complete, almost a fundamental way that we are introducing our methodology. In the past, you'd have a checklist. Well, I need to go through, I need to interview the customer. I need to go through, I need to do these things. And you're checking all your boxes down the list as a consultant. Where now what you're doing is you're putting the inputs directly into Atlas, and Atlas is producing out of all of those inputs the actual artifact, the deliverable for that client based upon all the information that's been included into it. So I think about it in it is our methodology, right?
Yeah.
It's accelerating our projects, but it is through the lens of AI versus the lens of a human.
So, where can Atlas help teams reduce risk and create more consistency during implementations?
So, kind of coming back to the conversation of, how we're utilizing AI to run this methodology. One, AI will do the things that you tell it or train it to do. So if
Hmm.
you say, I always want the output to look like X, Y, and Z, then that's the type of output you're going to get, right? So we're getting into the standardized deliverables. Okay. But then the other thing, and this has actually been one of the things that's been very exciting for me to see, is it improves the way we're doing requirements traceability. Now I can say, the requirement that we have here, it wasn't because a human heard it and then transcribed it down and hoped that they got it right. It's
Right.
because the requirement came out of the AI who could then go reference the exact snippet, the exact call. It's almost like writing a dissertation and you actually have citations, right? This is
Hmm.
where it actually came from. And this is the voice of the customer saying exactly what they wanted. So being able to have that requirements traceability is huge, and then it's really giving us a good consistency to our repeatable methodology, right? You're taking out the human factor, you're putting in the AI factor with that human oversight.
That. And then how should we help customers get comfortable with adopting AI enabled delivery? I know this is kind of a new concept and it's only been happening maybe the last, 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about like delivery methods and practical and responsible ways of doing this.
I first and foremost transparency. You have got to be very upfront
Hmm.
with your customer, with your client about what is actually going on underneath the hood, right? I think I always worry when I hear someone walk into the room, do a little bit of a hand wave and say, it's okay, the AI is going to take care of it for you, right?
Right.
Uh, and that always worries me, right? And
Right.
so I always like to talk about from a transparency standpoint. This is exactly what we are doing. This is the type of methodology. This is where your data is going. Because I think that's the other thing when we think about being comfortable with AI, right? Most people don't necessarily think about the security behind the scenes, right? And
Hmm.
we want to talk to that client and help them assure that frankly their data is in fact safe, right? And
Right.
then the last thing kind of doing that is really thinking about it from a phased adoption standpoint. Again, it's very much coming back to the crawl, walk, run, right? Start,
Hmm.
use it a little bit, get comfortable with it, understand it. I think that's the other thing is that this is one of those technologies where you can spend a lot of time just trying to understand how the technology works, right? And I think there's almost this area of study where there's the really smart people out there that can write an LLM and understand that LLM. And I think there's a secondary area of study that's almost like an applied version
Hmm.
of it, right? It's the
Hmm.
science and then the applied science. How do you apply this wonderful technology that we have in real world scenarios? And that's where I think people need to really study is that application area.
I like that because it keeps the conversation grounded in trust. It it keeps the adoption, the methodology. It's not just the technology itself. Like we're really like digging into like what you're doing, why you're doing it. I love to hear that. So this is for both of you. Can you share like a few practical ways Apex IT is already using AI in our day-to-day delivery or in our internal operations? Can you guys talk about that a little bit? I mean, obviously Atlas is one of the things, but what else are we
I'll also
doing?
talk about internally. So we
Yeah.
have many of pillars in the AI space. We talked about really the external delivery facing, customer facing technologies. We also
Mhm.
use it in house very regularly, from our marketing operations to our sales operations. We use AI to help automate all the documentation that's created, whether that
Mhm.
be using AI to summarize meetings and create action plans, to creating SOWs and RFP responses. We use
Mhm.
AI because we have this decades old context layer. So that's a big part of the AI, is making sure that you are also injecting your intelligence. Especially as a
Right.
consultancy, we have a center of excellence that has all this collateral that we keep, that we use. But now you give AI, with again the right governance layer, access to this content. So we're generating things like I mentioned, it's response documents, it's
Mhm.
contracts, it's marketing one pagers, which, often are slow to come out because we're focused on the next engagement. So now it's helped us with an operational, an acceleration in our internal operations.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think for me, a couple of the areas, and I'll talk about my specific use case scenarios. I very much use AI here as my second brain. We are constantly switching gears very quickly, talking to a lot of
Mhm.
different clients. I can't, used to be, I sit there and go, okay, what was that client? Was that, what did they ask for? And you'd get them mixed up in your head, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm very much using it as a second brain where I'm able to ask and sort of interview the AI and say, remind me about this particular client. What was their use case? What was their need, et cetera? If I sit there and as we're going and writing the types of documentation that Austin's talking about, right?
Mhm.
That's the other thing. AI can produce the documentation, but a human has to go through it. A human has to confirm that that is true. And there's sort of this back and forth where you can interview the AI. Why did you Why did you do that? Right? What
Hmm.
is the what where'd you come up with that information? And kind of balance that. And then the other thing, and complete transparency, I 100% used AI to prep for this. So,
That's okay.
you know,
That's good.
I put together some notes, put together some ideas, and I basically use it to prep for basically any meeting I'm going to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I can that's a great use of it though, because I think that's part of why AI was developed. I know a lot of people talk about this, about how, they're fearful that AI is going to take their jobs. At the end of the day, I don't think AI is here to take our jobs. What I think it's here to do is to help us do our jobs better. It's a tool. And as long as we continue to use it as a tool, I think it's going to be incredibly effective. I don't think that it's an effective use of trying to replace people. I think what it's doing is it's allowing them to do more and do better, right? And
Absolutely.
I really think at the end of the day, that's really how companies should be utilizing AI, is as a tool to improve the business and improve the output of their current employees, not replace them. Because I think at the end of the day, and we hear this all the time, you still need to have a human in the loop. And that doesn't mean just checking on the AI. That means checking on the business too. You need to continue to have someone there that is like tangibly,
Mhm.
touching everything and still talking to people. So I think it's really important to keep that at top of mind. So a lot of people think that AI is mainly about speed, and we hear this all the time. Let's go faster, let's do more, right? How can it also help reduce risk, improve quality, and create more consistency? Kind of like what I was talking about just now. Like, can you guys kind of tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on that?
Quality, consistency. What was the third one?
Reducing risk.
Risk.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to something I just called out is this context layer. So
Mhm.
one way to drive consistency, if we're asking, let's just say AI, go generate some user stories for me. Sure, it can, right? It'll generate thousands, but it's generally grounded in a whole lot of generally irrelevant context. So
Mhm.
making sure when you're thinking about risk, consistency, and that trust layer, I think you really have to ground the AI and focus the AI in your world, in your data, in your customers' context.
Sh
So that's a big way that we look at not only our platform like Atlas, but also our processes. We're grounding the AI in relevant context that we've been building for decades. I think that's a big one. But I also think you have to create a feedback loop with AI, right? So I think about it in my own personal prep. There's a thumb up and a thumb down, right? So just
Mhm.
that simple yes or no is training the model like, did this output meet the need? Yes or no? That feedback loop has to be built into your AI as well. If you're not doing that, you need to be thinking about that because those simple motions help improve the outputs.
Right. It gets
Uh,
better. Chris?
the yeah, just to add on to that a little bit. AI does not replace experience. And
Right?
I think that's one of the biggest things. The amount of people that I've run into that have said, "Well, AI can just do this for me," and the amount of bad answers that I have encountered
Yeah.
with AI. Right? You really have to make sure that not only are your inputs good, right, but your guardrails are there. I was describing to someone earlier today, they had AI provide them a potential technical answer for something, and I said, "The last time, AI provided me a technical answer in this area, it ran me down a rabbit hole to where I eventually found out that the answer it provided me had been deprecated 3 years ago." So so AI is wonderful from a data standpoint, right? It'll always give you an answer, right? But you got to have those guardrails. You got to have the things that you put in place. And this is something we're very aware of here at Apex, is making sure that when we're training these AI models, when we're putting the customer data in, that we're getting these guardrails in place so that we are getting good quality output. We are getting good consistency in answers and our outputs there.
So would you say that that's when human review and consultant judgment stay front and center, right?
That that is absolutely when they stay front and center. As a matter of fact, I don't see a time where they wouldn't stay front and center unless we eventually have some type of completely new AI model. Maybe it's Chris and Austin 2.0, right? Or a Crystal
Sure.
2.0. But
Sure.
right now in the state of the technology, I really think that the way to get the best out of AI, like you said, is treat it as a tool, not as a replacement.
So, how do we make sure that AI supports the work without removing the accountability? How do we ensure that? I know it's a tough question.
So I think probably one of the biggest things about the accountability, and this comes all the way back to AI is designed to give you an answer. It will give you
Hmm.
something, right? That doesn't mean that it's the right answer, right? And so we have from an accountability standpoint, until we have the technology to the point where not only can it provide an answer, but it can go and revalidate that answer against experience,
Sure.
that's where the accountability has to stay with a human, right? And that human has to have that experience to be able to drive that. I firmly believe that you cannot make AI accountable for something. You can kind of play this all the way out to just, maybe the science fiction version of AI, right? So I won't necessarily go too far into that, but
Well,
I think go
so
go ahead.
let me ask you about that really quickly because the episode
Sure.
right before this, I had the opportunity to speak with Alex Marshall. He's the chief AI officer for Snap AI, and one of the things that he and I were discussing were autonomous operators, where they were
Mhm.
making decisions on their own and they were working as a teammate, right? With folks, in day-to-day operations. And so do I am curious what you guys think. Like, do you think that that is not helpful? Do you think that's dangerous? I'd love your take on that.
Okay, so I have a take on it.
Okay.
My children are both under 18.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
never hand them the keys to my car. That is asking for a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But I would absolutely ask them to go down the street and get the mail because that is something that is the appropriate level for their
For
skill
sure.
set. It's the
Yep.
appropriate level for their age. It's the appropriate level from a task standpoint. And I think if you think about it in that sense, yes, you can absolutely have autonomous AI agents, but you have to gear the task for their level of skill. And you also have to gear the task for the level of risk that you're willing to accept as a business.
Yes,
What
exactly that.
happens if that autonomous agent goes off the rails? Are you okay with it doing that? You would not necessarily want to put an autonomous agent in if somebody is calling for $1,000 refund
Sure. Sure.
because it's
So
just going to go say, here you go.
you're saying with the appropriate guardrails that
Correct.
it would potentially be okay, but obviously that's something that you want to look into, I guess. Yeah.
I'd argue with the
Yes.
appropriate tasks as well. Yeah, I like you
Yeah.
stated that well. Like, I
Yeah, I
do
thought so
think
Now,
there's
too.
a world where everyday tasks will be accelerated and then truthfully mostly automated by AI, and I
Sure.
think that's okay
Yeah.
as long as we focus the knowledge base on the more complex tasks and the business outcomes. Like, I don't think we're there yet where machine is making business oriented decisions successfully at scale.
I'm just gonna have a little sidebar here about this. So I have actually seen where I'll give you an example. There are credit card companies that are approving and issuing credit cards to people based on their applications and the AI review. I thought that was really interesting that
mhm,
there are multiple credit card companies that are doing this type of thing where they're using autonomous operators to make those kinds of decisions. And I think that's a pretty major financial decision to, issue a credit card to someone, based on, whatever the AI is approving at the time. So I think that yes, I think it's task related that and it's important to have the guardrails around the tasks that you're allowing the AI to make those decisions with. But at the same time, I think that in some industries, we're very far ahead with the autonomous operators, and
mhm.
other ones, we're still kind of taking our time. And so it's really an interesting dichotomy right now of who's using what and when.
And I think it comes down to risk tolerance as well. I
That.
mean, kind of taking
Yep.
your example of the credit card companies and approving credit cards. Well,
Sure.
one, they have a risk model that they have
Mhm.
been fine tuning for
Yes.
years, right?
Right.
And so I could easily see that jumping over and saying, yes, let's do an autonomous agent in there. That being said, AI, I right now, I would not trust AI with my budget, with
Right.
my personal, like, it's not going to be running my books anytime soon. Right.
Right.
But that's because there's not a lot of buildup of that algorithm, if you will, that decision making authority in my own personal budget. Right.
Well, it's
For a
likely more
credit card company, that
nuanced
makes
as well,
sense.
right?
Yeah,
It's likely more nuanced in your personal finances than opposed
exactly.
to something larger where they're literally just taking someone's credit history and their credit score and saying yes or no based on that, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
All right.
certainly no expert in this domain, but
Yeah.
interesting topic for maybe a future is where you see this going, and maybe
Yeah.
your future interviewees is manufacturing is a good example of where AI and robotics are intersecting very rapidly. And so you're seeing, and maybe is it 2 years out, 3 years out, we see the humanoid robots. It's becoming more real.
So
So what is the
interesting you
right
should
task
bring that
there? I don't
up.
know.
So I actually talked to Tim Zook from Oracle last year about this, about manufacturing and I talked to a couple other folks too about like how they're utilizing AI and robotics in manufacturing, in warehouse management. It was really very interesting a topic and it was right around the holidays so we were really digging into like that sort of supply chain and warehouse management and how they're utilizing those tools currently. They are changing literally every single day. It is
Mm,
astounding how quickly they are innovating and changing in that space, in that warehouse management and that supply chain and procurement space. It's really stunning actually to see how quickly they are iterating in that area right now. So it is interesting that you brought that up though, because I did have an opportunity to chat with those guys earlier, or at the end of last year, rather. Excuse me. All
I
right.
mean, that's a
So
real good example of like the AI models and how they're being really advanced for
yeah,
these specific use cases.
for sure. For sure. It is really interesting to see how, like I said, how it's iterating and so quickly. It is going like at hyperspeed. All right. So let's talk to talk about Oracle. Let's talk a little bit about Oracle and Salesforce, guys. Austin, from a Salesforce perspective, where do you see AI creating the biggest opportunity for clients right now, and for consultants and for partners and things like people like that?
So I am in the camp. So when we think about in the Salesforce ecosystem, they consider Agent Force. That's on
Hmm.
platform AI, right? It's their Salesforce's tooling. I'll first start by saying when you're thinking about AI, the best AI engineers are just the curious engineer, in my
Hmm.
opinion. You don't have to have this deep background in model, engineering, data science, decision science. A curious engineer will be the most dangerous and most effective AI engineer. And I say that because anybody in a agent force setting can create an agent. So some of those use cases we talked about, I want to create a chat agent to deflect cases coming in, or I want to create a chat agent to respond to these type of inquiries. That is not very hard to do on these platforms. Very declarative. You don't have to have technical skill set. It helps you build these agents. Where
Sure.
I think is us as consultancy, the biggest value for our customers in this ecosystem is what we're doing with Atlas is accelerating implementation speed. It's twofold. It's not only that, but it's also creating the right software development lifecycle, which is in my mind a very different mechanic than what we do today. When we build these monolithic platforms, it takes months, it takes years, and
Hmm.
that process moves, right? We've got locked down with AI, these processes go much faster. So you set up that construct, but where you really inject the value is the acceleration of large module creation, development. It could be infrastructure, could be
Sure.
net new clouds. It's not the agents that do one task or two tasks, because I think any customer with the right enablement should be able to do that. You don't need us to do that. What you need consultancies with a lot of rich experience in these domains is really whether you're setting up a platform to accelerate M&A and your IT stack needs to be as agile as it can
Hmm.
be,
Hmm.
and that's where I think where we see the most value, whether it's Salesforce, Oracle, or beyond. You don't need us to build onesie twosie agents to that are focused on a task.
Yeah. And Chris, how about from the Oracle side, from the Oracle perspective?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting things that are happening within the Oracle space in this. One, I think Oracle's approach is very much sort of geared towards prompt engineering.
Hmm.
So if you can sort of think about how you want something to happen, instead of having to programmatically or some other type of way describe it, right? You're just using natural language very much as if I'm a prompt engineering or I'm
Hmm.
prompting an AI. And I think the other piece of it is that within the Oracle ecosystem, if it's in Oracle, you're not having to do any type of additional integrations or connecting the wiring to make something happen. If the data is available and it's in the ecosystem, you can just go in and in your prompt say, I want to compare or I want to do whatever I want to do with the data. And the amount of the ability to sort of inject it into a workflow that's already in play. The way I described it recently was if you can imagine a process, because at the end of the day, all of these tools and applications, all they're doing is processing data that's flowing back
Right.
and forth, right? And if you could just inject or intercept somewhere in a flow and live, if you wanted to write a prompt or write some type of quote unquote code against that input and then have something happen, that's sort of the power that you're getting out of the Oracle system is that sort of intercept, have that very complex prompt against it, and then having those outputs come out of it. And without having to do a lot of coding. Like in a lot of ways, even, business users are geared very similar to the Salesforce place. People that are laymen can walk in and get very comfortable with
Hmm.
doing this type of automation.
Absolutely. So what should business leaders be doing now so that they're ready to take advantage of these capabilities? I know what I think, but I'd like to hear from you guys. We've talked about this.
No,
Well,
no,
I'll
yeah, go
start.
ahead,
I mean,
Austin.
there's two areas in my mind.
Sure,
Chris mentioned
sure.
one earlier, and I think it starts with experimenting. You have to go out and
Mm,
try.
sure,
Have some folks on your team using AI, and it may not be in the most immediate value creating way, but at least you're comfortable
sure.
with the tools. You understand how the innovation works, the speed at which innovation happens, and how to, it's how to work with the tools. Secondly, is working with your business partners. So that maybe, and maybe speaking from an IT perspective, but whether you own the business or you own the technology, making sure you're creating a holistic roadmap. Start getting people to write, they're raising their hands with all these use cases, get them
Hmm.
documented, put them into some type of backlog where you can manage that backlog because it will accelerate very quickly. Those are the two biggest things that I generally recommend is getting your hands on the technology to start understanding it. And then secondly, building that roadmap.
Yeah, that's great. Chris?
It's interesting. My answer might even contradict something I said earlier. So I'm going to say, first off, I
That's
suspect I
fair.
think I know what your answer is, which I think is data, possibly. But no, if I was a business leader starting from scratch thinking about I think actually the last thing I would do is think about AI. And let me explain this. You should not be implementing AI for the sake of AI.
Agreed.
Okay. And so then what you actually need to do is not be thinking about, well, what AI technology am I going to use? How am I going to get people to adopt it? All of that stuff. From I'll channel my contact center background. You need to think about what your customer experience is going to be. What is it you actually want to achieve? What is the need that you have to achieve? Once you define what that experience is, now you bring it up and say, this is what I want. Is AI the right application for me to achieve the output that I want? If you, long as you have the customer experience as number one mind, you will always end out in a positive with that
Hmm.
customer. And maybe sometimes you don't want AI in the middle of it or automation. Again, calling back to the IVR and the many times that I have called an IVR and the AI or automation has said, I can help you with that. And no, it can't. Right. And you don't want that experience. You want a
Right.
positive experience.
Right, right. Yeah, agreed. Okay. So I think that's a pretty helpful view of where we are today, right? So let's look ahead. Let's talk a little bit about the future state. So over the next, I don't know, year, 2, 3 years, right? What are you most excited to see AI make possible in the marketplace? and maybe even in our lives? Like what are you kind of excited about? What have you heard?
So I think from a sort of a business marketplace standpoint, I am most excited about the types of things that are changing in terms of the mundane task, if you will, the
Mhm.
sort of everyday task that not everybody likes to do, and that being automated. I do a lot of that in my own personal life already.
Sure.
I think it's just going to get more and more accelerated, right? Where there's going to be less guidance that you have to give the AI. There's going to be less work that you have to do to get the output that you're looking for. I'll give you a good example. PowerPoint presentations or any type of slideware,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Today it can be a little tricky to get the AI to give you exactly what you're looking for. I am definitely looking for a day when I don't have to design a slide ever again.
Right.
So that's my goal. And then I think just in general, I'm actually very excited for how AI is going to be perceived and used by the upcoming generation.
Yeah.
My children, I do let them interact with AI in somewhat of a supervised fashion, but they
Mhm.
have come up with some of the most inventive ways of applying AI in their lives. And I looked at her and I go, "Oh no, I'm now the old person in the room, and my kids are going to eventually be telling me, okay, Dad, this is how you have to use AI when I'm 30 years from now." So
Right, right.
I'm not looking forward to that day, but I'm very much looking forward to it.
I love that. Austin, how about you?
So just this is probably more in a personal matter, but it also will
Yeah.
extend in the enterprise world. But I really appreciate AI from a voice capability standpoint. It's mainly, I think, in the open AI sense. I find it very
Mhm.
valuable. And I find that, and you see this actually, going back to Chris's call center, like you see this in the service world. So you can, talk to a voice agent. That's something that's out there today. I think that's getting more mature.
Mhm.
I'm really excited about the day when that goes into the multimedia end of video. So I am somebody that I like to learn through others. So I watch a lot of YouTube. I look
Mhm.
forward to the day where I can go into AI and it's going to create me a how-to video. Tell me how to install this drum in this washing machine, this model. Some content creator, I love the content creators out there, but somebody hasn't created this model. So AI creates me this
Sure.
content, this video. I look forward
Right.
that when we continue to add different media forms,
Mhm.
I look forward to the day that it's there in video.
That's
My
awesome.
considering the fact that both my kids wanna grow up to be YouTubers, I will tell them to not
The
bank
dream
on
is
it right
over.
now. Right, it's over,
The dream's done.
the dream's over.
I think for me, the things that I personally have really, really liked so far have to what you were kind of talking about earlier, Chris, is that a lot of those like mundane tasks it's been really lovely to sort of turn over some of that stuff to AI and allow it to sort of take the lead there. And the fact that it's learning to speak in my voice is even better. Like that, I really appreciate. What I'm really looking forward to is it being able to just at some point like know based on my meeting schedule and my whatever that what I'm going to need to prep for this meeting and I'm going to need to write an email and I'm going to need to write a deck for this and it's going to know what I need and just automatically generate that. That's what I'm looking forward to, and I know that that is coming. I've already seen some
Mhm.
kind of things that are close to that. I think you can do that with Claude. Right now, you can ask Claude to sort of be your assistant and do those things, so I'm really looking forward to that in the future. But in the business space, what I'm looking forward to is I'm looking forward to it improving the way we deliver projects and the way we deliver managed services. Like, managed services is my sweet spot. And I'm seeing how AI can help us on the daily, right? So I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how it can innovate and improve these processes that we, kind of do every day. I don't see those processes going away. What I see is them getting better and easier and faster and more streamlined. And that's really what I'm looking forward to. So, okay. So here's an Atlas question, guys. So, how do you see Atlas evolving as Apex IT learns from our delivery use cases and from our projects and things like that? Like, how do you see it evolving over the next like 12 months, 2 years, whatever? 6 months?
I think 6 months, Atlas will be able to, again, we work with multiple platforms.
Right.
And in 6 months, our vision is that we can stitch together a journey. A piece of data goes from a lead to just say fast forward to an order to
Hmm.
a billing line. I should
Yeah.
be able to, with an Atlas, map an entire journey across platforms, multiple clouds, because we're
Yeah.
communicating with multiple systems. I should be able to create a journey on behalf of my customer from tip to tail across platforms.
Amazing.
And so that's what we're trying to achieve here in the next 6 months.
And I
Fantastic.
think from my perspective for the methodology, I think it's going to continue to decrease our time to implement, right? And
True.
then I think what's going to end up happening is that I expect Atlas to start recommending to us additional things that we should be doing, right?
Hmm.
Where are the opportunities? Where are the areas where no human has actually thought of necessarily for a particular
Right.
client? Go look at this area because it sees something through pattern recognition that we just have not had an opportunity to see. So I think that's where I'm excited the most in the next 6 months.
So, my expectation is that Atlas is going to help us identify where AI makes the most sense in the business processes, and two, how we manage their, managed services in the future as well. Like, how do we ensure that we're continuously helping them in the most significant way, right? What's
Mhm.
going to help them keep their business running as smoothly as possible with as few hands in the pot, if you will, as possible, right? That's what I'm hoping to see, and that's what my expectation is that we're going to get to that point. I don't know if it'll happen in the next 6 months, but I do anticipate it'll happen in the next 12 to 18 months. I do think that will happen for sure because I do believe that that is something that we're working towards. Okay. So, what would you say is the most important thing for businesses, leaders to think about right now with AI and the marketplace and what they're doing? What's that one thing that they should be really considering? Is it automation? Is it people? Is it AI, right? Like what's the thing that they should be kind of keeping front of top of mind?
So actually my take on this is the top of mind thing is actually people. And let me explain that for a second.
Sure.
The You can hire somebody like Apex to
Sure.
put in AI in your processes, right? But if you don't take the opportunity to upskill your folks in terms of understanding how AI works, understanding how it's changing your business, right? If you're doing it just from a even from a cost cutting standpoint or a
Mhm.
right sizing standpoint, you still need to do a level of investment because AI is just a tool. It's just a technology. If you don't
Right.
train the people how to use it, I think that's the thing. So I think if I were sitting in that situation, I'd be starting to think about how am I going to upskill my teams? Who are the people that are going to lead us in that type of journey? That's where I would go.
Austin, how about you?
I would echo the same thing. I immediately went to people. Your people have to believe in the technology. They have to understand the technology and how it better theirs and your customers' lives.
Mhm.
So I think once you establish the trust with the AI, you will have. I mean, and when you think about people, it's in the enablement of your people
Mhm.
with AI. So building out processes, training, etc. I think bringing the people along because they're the ones that are going to provide the context layer to AI. So focusing on your people is often neglected because we're so focused on doing something with the technology and
Right.
doing it faster than we have been that we forget about there's somebody that has to govern or
Or has to
institutionalize the
use it.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, someone has to use it at the end of the day, and, like, if we're not teaching them how to use it and use it appropriately and responsibly, then what's the point, right? Because it's
Yep.
not gonna
Right.
do what you want it to do if we're not taking the time to train and enhance our people, right? Okay, so my last question, if we have someone listening today, a client, executive, a consultant, just anyone, right? And they're wondering how to get started, right? What's the first conversation they should be having with their team?
That's a good question. I like that one, Crystal.
I do okay once in a while.
Right. I think the first conversation, if they're looking to get into AI, and the first conversation they should be having with their team is where are your problem points? Like, where are the areas that you struggle is probably the wrong word, but where are the areas that we could make things better? A good example: how many teams or companies out there have a process where somebody takes a Excel file, attaches it to an email, emails it to somebody, and then someone else has to take the data off that Excel file and put it somewhere else. Inefficient processes. And we all
Sure.
know they're there. And you go and you ask them, you say, why is that there? And they say, well, it's just always been like that. Because, Joanne years ago decided for it to happen. Right.
Right.
And so I guess that if I was that person and I was talking to my team, is I would say, let's go find the areas of inefficiencies. Like, talk to me. What are the things you hate or don't like about your daily grind? And those are the things that I would start looking at, identifying, of saying, how could we make that better? Not only for my employees, but also for my customers.
It's a great way to start your use cases, right?
100%.
Austin?
Yeah. So I love that. I think you have to start with a problem statement, but I also
Yeah.
think you have to look at this that AI is generally delivered in partnership. So
Hmm.
figuring out who is your partner, whether it's you're the technologist and you're partnering with the business, process owner, product owner, there's generally a partnership that's established with technology and owner. So I think
Mhm.
establishing that partnership early, because again, part of the AI, the speed at which we develop AI, you have to measure success continually. And I think your partner or whoever this process or product or business owner is understands how to measure the success, whether it be, reducing cycle time, increasing revenue, or simply reducing time of operations. We need to have a feedback loop. So establishing that partnership between technology and owner, I think is really critical.
Austin and Chris, thank you both so much for joining me today and for giving us a practical look at how AI is being utilized in the marketplace, how Atlas is being utilized at Apex IT and delivered, and how Apex IT is bringing AI into real enterprise delivery. For our listeners, the takeaway is clear. AI is not just something to watch. It's something organizations can begin now with the right strategy, governance, and partner. Thanks for listening to Decoded Dialogues, and we'll see you next time. Take a look at us on any platform where you get your podcasts. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Crystal.